My name is Susanna Whitney, Principal Bassoon of the Memphis Symphony Orchestra, and I wanted to give you some tips on how to prepare for the All West Senior 11 and 12 bassoon audition for band. First of all, I wanted to say how sorry I am that it will not end with a big concert at the Cannon Center. I know that's kind of the best part about it, but congratulations for thinking about auditioning anyway. Weissenborn is one of the great bassoon pedagogues, and so learning how to play the music that he wrote kind of ties you in with all of the other bassoon players around the world anyway, because everybody's played this music at some point, anybody who studies the bassoon long enough, and so it's good for you to learn it no matter what, no matter what the end game is. Of course, 6/8 means 6 beats to a measure, and the 8th note gets a beat. Many of you may still count this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But at this point, it's probably better to count 1 and a 2 and a 1 and a 2 and a. I think a lot of times we want to make it a pickup, a 1 and a 2 and a 1 and a 2 and a 1 and a 2 and a. The only thing is if you play it that way, the rests get a little tricky. So really make sure you're playing on the beat. 1 and a 2 and a 1 and a 2 and a 1 and a 2 and a. And the other thing that's really tricky, well, there are a lot of tricky things in this etude. A lot of them are the octave jumps. Jumping down on the bassoon with an octave is incredibly hard. And if you're gonna gamble, I would say it's better to tongue than to crack a note, but you should be able to play if your whisper key is working well. So always make sure your whisper key, the pad is closing. When you press your whisper key, the pad is closing right there. I also want to make sure that when you press your E key, the pad is closing, and you can go to AMRO and have that fixed if your bassoon isn't working that way. Especially the E octaves, they don't always come out even if your whisper key does work. So you want to work pretty hard with that. Let me get my reed a little wetter. It's kind of dry. You're going to make sure that the G's are coming out, the E's, and you're going to want to drop your jaw for that. It's going to be your best bet to get it out. Like I said, it's really, really hard. And if you just find that you're working at it, and do work at it before you decide to tongue it. Just give it a light tongue. As opposed to a tongue. Ta-la, ta-ta-la, ta-ta-la, like that. Should help. The other thing that I find is pretty hard for bassoon players is the grace note. It's just a ba-da, ba-ba-ba-da, ba-ba-ba-da, ba-ba. Make it a bit of a dance. Don't think too hard about it. Everything else is pretty straightforward. I think the hardest note is probably your G sharp. So just remember that's whisper key, half hole 2, 3 with your top pinky, and then B flat, your B flat key, 3 and 4 is your G sharp. And again, the octave after that. So then we get to the maggiore section. Make sure you take a big pause before the maggiore section. We're going to kind of think of that as a trio. You can, or you may not want to play it slower. It's a pretty long piece to play. So if you want to take it slower, you can. If not, just make sure you change character a little bit. We musicians are just actors with music. So you want to go from having a character of joviality to a little bit more soft. So maybe, you know, you think about your dad's kind of silly, but your mom's a little sweeter. So you want to try and get those two characters in there. Take a big breath before you play that. The other thing I was kind of noticing with this is all the other All West auditions have had a lot of piano, forte, mezzo forte, you know, telling you what dynamic to play. This one does not. So I think you get to kind of choose what you want to play. And I would really think about that. My teacher's rule was always, if the line goes up, you kind of play louder as you go up, and if the line goes down, you kind of play softer with that. And so some of these lines are going to have a crescendo and a decrescendo. Do you hear? And you're going to be able to do that throughout this whole piece. I'm going to try and play it for you, and you will see just how hard it is to play this whole thing without making mistakes. So if you make, well, I guess you aren't doing live auditions. I always tell my students, if you make a mistake, you can't fix it, keep going. Think about it afterwards. You don't want to get hung up on your mistakes. I find I do that a lot. I get so upset about a mistake that I made that I make more mistakes, and you don't want to do that. You just want to let it go. You'll think about it later. And I'm not going to edit that because I want you to see that those G's are really, really hard. I think so many of my students beat themselves up for those G's, and those G's are really, really hard. So do tongue them if you need to. The other thing I have to mention is they usually choose a shortened portion of this. You want to learn the whole thing, of course. But they always choose part of both sections. So you have to learn the tenor clef. And if you don't know tenor clef yet, the clef holds middle C. So the C without the whisper key. So a lot of you, that'll be your high C. So it's going to start C sharp, E, A, C sharp, B, D, F sharp, A, G sharp. A lot of my students want to write in all of the tenor clef, and I don't think you should do that. You're not going to learn tenor clef if you just write everything in. Write in a couple here and there. So write in the C sharp in the beginning of the Maggiore section. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bars later, that's an A, where we go. Sorry, there's water in my keys. Then do you notice how 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 bars are repeated again? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for 6 bars. So the first 6 bars are repeated again, and then the ending is a little different before you go back into bass clef. In music, you always want to look for that repetition. it will help you if you think, oh, I've already learned this part. It kind of helps with your brain, and then it also means that you don't have to learn as much. I'll go on to the second audition. The second audition is much easier, and it gives you a lot more of a roadmap, dynamics-wise and articulation-wise. A minuetto, tempo di minuetto, is a minuet. It's a dance. You want to think about that. You don't want to go ba-da-ba-ba-bee, ba-da-ba-ba-bee, you don't, so it doesn't have to be fast. It has to be slow enough that somebody can dance to it. 3/8 is just like 6/8, except there's only 3/8 notes. 1 and 2 and 3, 1 and 2 and 3, 1 and 2 and 3, 1, 2, 3. And of course I don't have perfect pitch. I'm sorry. So count that. I think people actually tend to have a harder time counting the 3/8 piece than they do the 6/8. We see 6/8 a lot more, so it makes sense. But 3/8 is just half of a 6/8 bar. 1 and 2 and 3, 1 and 2 and 3, 1 and 2 and 3, 1, 2, 3. 1 and 2 and 3, 1 and 2 and 3, 1 and 2 and 3, 1, 2, 3. So this is actually an easier piece to play. Even though maybe it looks harder because of all the lines, it looks like there's a lot more 16th notes, but because it's slower, it should be much easier to play. It's also much shorter, which is also easier to play. Make sure you count those 8th notes in the 1, 2, 3, the 4th bar. Make sure that you play those 8th notes. They're going to feel pretty slow. A lot of people want to go, and it's running 16th notes at bar 9 with that weird piano crescendo, decrescendo. Feels weird to everybody. So if you're like, this feels weird, you're doing it right. And then the second half of it is just the opposite of what you've played, kind of where the first half goes up, the second half goes down. That always helps me just to kind of think about it as a sentence. You know, you could be like, I walked to the store, and then he's coming back at bar 17. I walked back from the store. Music is a language, so everything tells a story. And the rhythms are all pretty much the same on the second half. So if you have the rhythm for the first half, you have the rhythm for the second half. The notes, though, are different. And so I think for all of my students, no matter who my student has been, I've made them go through and say every single note name. F, A, C, F, A, C, F, A, C, kind of like what you would do with the tenor clef section. But do it again, especially for the third line. So bar 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. People kind of feel like those G sharps are really going to throw them off. And so make sure you say that. It is hard to play the bassoon. It is hard to play music. So kind of learn the music, learn the bassoon, and then kind of put them together. That's what I always think. I'll play this for you. And that's the music. I hope this video has helped you. I hope you've learned a little bit, and I wish you luck on your audition.